And boom, we are live. I am here with the New Look Tokyo tonight. Check it out. We've got new stuff. I was trying to set the show up like this last week, where I could show my Flipboard in the middle, which I think I've got here. Boom, there's my Flipboard in the middle. There's the comments on the side. There's the thumbnail for the show over there. Yes, pointing at the screen over there. And I can hear myself playing back. So I will pause the video, but you can see the comments there. And so this all looks quite good. You know, you can. I took out all the stuff which was taking up screen space. Just put all that in the thumbnail. So yeah, let me know how you like the new look. I see the comments have already been going a bit crazy, but what I like about this is I'm looking straight ahead at the preview screen of the output at the moment, which means that in this I can see the comments at the same time as I'm reading. I can read the news off the screen as well, which means that we're all looking at the same thing at the same time, and this allows me to be able to be more responsive to your comments. I'm not missing the comments the whole time. It might lead to being a bit more distracted at times, but this should be awesome. Plus I've got a really awesome track lined up that I made today. I've been as I've been tweeting, I was kind of spent this, I don't know why, at some point this week I just remembered I wanted to listen to The Antwoord. I think it's probably because I noticed that they were in a preview for Chappie. I guess every famous person from South Africa is going to be in there. There's that what's her face, the one in America who was on Lethal Weapon 2. She's probably going to be in one of Blomkamp's movies at some point. But anyway, I saw them and I thought I'd just listen to some of their tracks, and I've just been like, yeah, it's and what I love about it, I mean, I love that actually, you know what I've noticed the second time, I mean, everyone's very caught up with the personas and everything of the Antwoord and what is it, but I actually, I'm a big fan of the beats, actually, and the fact that it's done, it's all pretty simple, but there's a lot of subtle goodness to it, and yeah, listening to that's been good for me this week. Oh, which reminds me, I don't need this anymore. I was just listening to my Argonauts. For those of you who don't know, actually, I favorited the video earlier. My Argonauts is now doing a pre-show to this, more or less. He's being respectful to the schedule. He is giving, he's starting at 10 p.m. and finishing by 11 and shouting out the show as he does it. So I'm going to shout him out right back. If you're online early, I suggest maybe splitting your screen, going half and half on the countdown comments here and half on watching his stuff, because he's actually the same. He's following Japanese news and topics, although from his perspective, and also he's a movie buff, so he's always got pretty good topics and so on to talk about, and he's a really good guy. So I'm very, very happy to have someone like him as the show preceding mine, and I'll shout him out. If you don't know him, my Argonauts, definitely go subscribe. I'm going to write his channel name in the comments right now. He might even appear in the comments at some point, because that's not it. It's not my Argonatus. It's my Argonauts. There we go. Who is also Jason's All Sumo channel. Big news, of course, today in the Sumo, which is that spoiler, for the first time in 3 years, Hakone, who of the three Yokozuna, he's clearly like the Yokozuna of the Yokozuna. He's clearly the most superior grand champion at the moment. On a huge winning streak at the moment. He's lost. You have 15 days and you have one match every day for a 15-day tournament, and for the first time in 3 years he lost the opening day match against a real up-and-comer, Ijinojo. So big drama today, actually. The match itself wasn't terribly dramatic, but just the fact of what it achieved was kind of big news. So yes, if you want to find out more about that and all that goodness, go and check out Jason's All Sumo channel. And my Argonauts has a great opening show to this. Great that I can see. I love that I can see the comments just looking straight ahead. So I saw Num, Daniel Biff. Who else we got here? We got Mr. Cordy Chet, Posey May, Razo Ghoul, Benjamin Harris, King Cheeseburger, Emily Louise Maitland. Always good to see you there, and everyone else. It's awesome. So I can see all you guys, and we can actually interact more or less in real time. Oh, now I want to tweak something. I can see I've just the bottom comment. Well, it doesn't matter. I've half covered up the bottom comment. But in any case, lots of good stuff to talk about tonight, and I love that I'm going to have all the comments actually in the final video. So let's get into the topics that I have from this week. I don't have a lot, which I hope means that I can talk in some proper detail about the topics that I've got. Also, someone asked earlier, Fox Morris, I believe, asked, can they request topics? Yes, you can. What I actually like the best, just because of the format, is if you've got a link to a story or a blog or something about the topic that you have and send it to me. And if you ask, hey, can you include this in the show, I will include it in the Flipboard and on the show. So do that. I'll happily include it. And of course, now I can see the comments, so I hopefully will be a little bit more responsive to the questions or the comments, although I know that the chat here has its own sort of a life. Daniel Piff, it's your first Tokyo Tonight. Well, welcome for your first Tokyo Tonight. Very good to have you here. And yes, you can see notifications at the top of my iPhone. This is my iPhone currently being hooked up to an HDMI capture. But this actually means I'm not taking up CPU stuff on the PC. Hopefully it means that I can do this without slowing down the broadcast. So yes, let's get into it. So first thing, I actually photographed this today at Korakuen Station. These are going up everywhere. For tourists, free Wi-Fi at the station. There is, check this out, there is an app now going, Toei Subway, and I believe they've got the Tokyo regional government, and I think that there's a consortium of the telco companies. This is feedback in action. Bit of context, Japan's never, I think I mentioned this before, Japan's never been particularly good for tourists, or at least for foreign tourists. There's been a huge, tourism in Japan has always been huge, but it's always been aimed at Japanese tours. The great thing about Japanese tours is that they're in large, the traditional Japanese tour is a package tour. People get into buses with the tour guide, they're taken to certain places, they spend, they only get 1 or 2 big vacations per year, so they spend all of their leisure money during that trip, so they get taken to certain restaurants, taken to certain shops, they stay in certain hotels. Most of the places have kind of kickback systems, and anyone who's worked with Japanese tourism outside of Japan knows about this. They basically pay kickbacks to the tour guides and so on that come them, and all have arrangements between the tour companies and the places that introduce them. And what all this meant was that given that 99% of the tourist economy back in the 90s was Japanese people traveling around Japan, and for the few backpackers like myself that were coming in and looking for where I could buy a cheap souvenir, t-shirt, and where I could find the cheapest place to stay, even when they had the tourist information marks at train stations, they wouldn't give you the time of day. If you weren't in a registered tour that was affiliated with the tours that they were allowed to give advice to, or something like that, or they would say that, where's a cheap hotel? And they'd say, well, we can only tell you the names of these hotels that are affiliated to us. So, yeah, I'd have to stay in business hotels and pay $150 a night. When I was traveling around Japan on my Japan Rail Pass. Foreigners were really an afterthought, and probably because we were in little single units, we spoke a language that, again, with Japanese tours, you don't need to speak the language. They spend heaps of money. They're in large groups. So, there was never any real rational reason, even, frankly, other than the fact it would just be nice and hospitable to look after foreign tourists. But they never looked after us. When I was a tourist, when I was a backpacker around Japan. However, Olympics 2020, people have been complaining. Ever since Koizumi back in 2002 set a goal that Japan was going to become a tourist superpower, and Japan was going to have 20 million tourists by 2020. And I think he set a goal of 13 million tourists by 2012, which was achieved this year. And when I heard that, I thought it was a joke, frankly, because I couldn't understand. Japan, everyone knows, is a great place. It's safe. Even if no one can understand you and you can't get any information and nothing is designed or set up to be convenient for you, you still can't really go wrong in Japan because, it's safe. The way foreigners go wrong in Japan is getting drunk and getting in fights and so on. And even then, the police would always go easy because they don't want to deal with foreigners and so on, back in the old days. But with the Olympics coming up, one, they're really, really putting a lot of effort into trying to attract tourists. And now that those tourists are coming, they're actually asking for tourists' opinions. It's amazing. And they did the survey, a huge survey of all these tourists that were coming through last year. What are the things that you want to see more of? They were actually asking us what we think. And the number one, I think back in Koizumi's time, they were focusing on having multilingual, like English-speaking tourist support, which didn't exist in a lot of places in Japan. And having bilingual signs and stuff like that. These are real baby steps. But when they actually last year did a huge survey of tourists coming in and out of Japan, they asked them, so what are the things that you would most like to see improved? And the first thing that the top ranking result was everyone wanted free Wi-Fi. They were frustrated they came to Japan and they couldn't use their smartphones and their mobile phones to get information. So the government has got all the telecommunications companies together. And, again, you've got the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, the subway company here, and they've all gotten together. And all over the place now, they're providing free Wi-Fi for tourists. And not only that, but apps and English tourist information sites that people can use to get around on their free Wi-Fi. Tokyo Chipo, who was on 2.5 Oyajis this week, great episode this week, he actually mentioned, it's a shame it's only for tourists. Indeed, it's not for residents. I can kind of see why that is. If it was free for everybody, everyone would use it. You'd have bandwidth issues, you'd have risks of hacking and so on, or at least increased risk of hacking. So I guess keeping it limited to tourists. Plus, of course, the thing about the difference between tourists and a resident like me, it's not that they're doing it for poverty. It's that I can access the internet whenever I want to because I live here and I've got a phone and I pay a phone contract. But for tourists, you can't get a phone contract here. There are hardly any rental phones or anything like that. So yeah, there is actually no alternative for those people other than finding free Wi-Fi. So it's not a lost business opportunity to the phone companies that provide it. So it's Docomo, KDDI, SoftBank, I believe, are cooperating with these places to provide this everywhere. And it is for visitors to Japan. It's not for residents, which I guess sucks. But hell, I see the internet everywhere anyway, and this is for the people to let them see the internet the way that I see the internet. But this is a sign. I noticed this sticker up on a wall. I took a picture of it because I thought, yeah, way to go. They're actually making stuff more convenient. You can actually bring your so long as you've got a Wi-Fi capacity tablet or iPhone or even a PC, you can sit in a train station, or now that they've got all the Yamanote line stations in Tokyo are connected, starting with train stations, but also a lot of other places are becoming much more connected. And all of this is actually with a view to making Japan more convenient for foreign tourists. It's kind of mind-blowing that they're actually starting to... Back in my day, they never used to look after us. We had to tour Japan barefoot through the snow. It was almost like that, actually. That's almost not an exaggeration. Kids these days, they've got it too soft, don't they? But anyway, it's a good sign of progress. So I took that today and I was very happy about that. And look at that, I just spent 10 minutes talking about free Wi-Fi. I've got to improve my speed a little bit. So this is kind of cool. I'm still trying to get my life routine is being disrupted at the moment because I'm moving house next month. I'm also changing my main work location, same company, but I'm actually being shifted from central Tokyo down to Yokohama most days, which is going to be a longer commute for me. So I've been trying to set up a routine this year. It's one of my resolutions to use the YouTube space more. It's kind of hard to set up, and as people saw from the meltdown video that Victor posted, even though we agreed at the time it wouldn't be a good idea to post that video, if you want to know what I'm talking about, I think it's on Gimmeabreakman. You can go and have a look at it. The first take of the Hanami summary, which I did with Victor, that I stopped partway through and said I want to start again because I was getting very angry about a topic that we were talking about. So if you want to see me very angry, you can go watch it. But yeah, every time we shot a video there, and every time I've shot a video there, something's always gone wrong with the sound. They've got great equipment there, and they do show you how to use it, and it all looks very simple. But it's funny. I just take my little GH3 and I shoot it, and you can adjust the levels and everything later, and it's fine. But when we've got all these wireless, lap mics and everything like that, or, I had the huge crazy gunshot mic and everything, something's gone wrong every single time with the sound there. And it's really frustrating. I know that the equipment there is meant to be really good, but anyway, I'm going to try again. I have booked this space because a friend, Rochelle Kopp from Japan Intercultural Consulting, is making a visit to Japan, and I plan to record a video with her. I asked if she would actually come on 2.5 Oyajis and do a live show. But her schedule won't allow that, but we are going to go and record something, and we thought it'd be fun to do it in the space. So I'm going to record another video in the space. I'm trying to figure out a good way to set it up and how to go about it that we won't have these terrible sound issues again. But that will be cool. But this is a bit of a news about Stan Lee and Marvel Comics. At the moment in the Tokyo YouTube space has actually has this Jidaigeki, this historical movie theme thing at the moment, where there's a lot of samurai movies being made in the space. They've got special samurai sets set up there, which is pretty cool. But not really my thing, frankly. I don't know what I'd do sitting on a samurai set to shoot a video. But what is my bag is that Stan Lee is setting up superhero-themed Marvel comic-themed studio redesigns for all the YouTube spaces, including Japan, which is going to happen from the end of this month, I believe. And that is something I'm kind of interested to check out. I don't know, to be even be in just a comic-themed set. just for like the whole pop art. I'm a Roy Lichtenstein fan from pop art and so on. To me, this is awesome, and this is something I want to check out. So yeah, Stan Lee's talking about what he's doing with YouTube to redesign the spaces, basically to allow sets to be set up to do superhero themed videos in the YouTube sets. And I don't know, this inspires me to want to actually book this space and think of something to do. So El Comedo, I don't know if Stan is actually coming to. You know what? I can probably find out. I might ask. I might be able to find out. There was actually a tweet which I retweeted today from the YouTube Space Twitter account, which mentioned in Japanese the time period that the space will be renovated. I think he's only helping with the renovations. I don't think Stan Lee is coming to Japan, but you know, if I was Stan Lee, I would say, let me go to Japan if I was him. So he might be coming here. I might try to ask people at YouTube about that, see if I can do that. And El Comedo, I will not do Sheepman Hero. I won't do it. No, not cool, man, not cool. But anyway, I can think of something anyway. So that's pretty cool. So I put that in there. Another story actually with the Taiji Dolphin ongoing drama. This is kind of an interesting. This kind of came out of the blue, but it seems to actually have caused some shockwaves in Japan. It's been much more effective than having, frankly, you know, some yobs come in and try to terrorize and harass the locals in Taiji, in the town that does the dolphin hunt. Really, all that does is entrench people against, it just entrenches people against the more reasonable-minded protesters and what they're about. So rather than have this kind of Sea Shepherd type confrontational stuff, apparently the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums, WAZA, as it's called, WAZA, has announced last month that they're suspending the Japan Association of Zoos and Aquariums, JAZA. They're very cool names, WAZA and JAZA. They sound like Australian girls, actually. That's for some reason, Australia has the AZA thing going on a lot with nicknames. So yes, apparently they've suspended Japan from this. They put them on a warning notice, and now they're on a suspension, and they could be expelled. And this would affect something like 140 zoos and aquariums in Japan. Only a small number of them apparent. Well, now what is the story with that? Yeah, most of the animals in these zoos have captive breeding and so on. But it's true that most of the zoos that have dolphins, or the aquariums that have dolphins, do source them from Taiji. In fact, Taiji, and it's mentioned in the movie The Cove, how Taiji is one of the #1 locations in the world for capturing and exporting bottlenose dolphins. I mean, not just in Japan, but to aquariums all over the world. So the new angle of attack is to suspend and expel Japan and any place that accepts dolphins from Taiji that are subject to this hunt, on the basis that the dolphin hunt there is done inhumanely. So the indeed was so the result, what the impact of this suspension is that it's not just inconvenient, uncomfortable for the Japanese zoos and aquariums. Apparently there's cases which are shown on the news that, for example, Japan participates in a lot of breeding programs for rare and endangered animals. Like, for example, there's a zoo somewhere that has Sumatran tigers, which are on loan from another zoo in Waza through Jaza to this zoo. And all of those, well, there's a fear that those breeding programs and so on could be closed down if Japan is expelled from the organization. And indeed, that means that they wouldn't have access to these animals as well, and it could really affect the business of a lot of these zoos. On the other hand, given that apparently dolphins are very difficult to get to breed in captivity, and there aren't many other ways to capture dolphins at the moment other than from Taiji, there is a problem that the zoos, if they can't take dolphins from Taiji, they might not be able to have dolphins. So it is an interesting and it's an effective way, I think, to be putting pressure on Japan over the Taiji issue. Apparently the JAZA tried to explain to WAZA, it sounds like two Australian women talking to each other still, to me, if you ask me, but apparently JAZA told WAZA that they've been trying very hard to improve the humaneness of the technology, of the techniques used to capture these dolphins in a drive hunt. And to try to do that more humanely and to capture them more humanely. However, it's given that this is basically being driven by opposition to the dolphin hunt itself, it's hard to think that there would really be much time to listen to that. So yeah, it is interesting, and it's actually it's a leverage point that to date no one really thought of having over Japan. So I mean, I guess for the opponents of the Taiji hunt, it's probably an effective thing. that said, the Taiji itself has apparently issued a statement in response to this, saying that, you know, they have city and prefectural permission to do the hunts, and they're going to keep doing them. You know, they're within their rights to do it. But certainly there is a thing here, they're trying to attack their market rather than the fishermen themselves, and I think that makes sense, actually. So yeah, it's interesting. Interesting development this week that came from out of the blue. For those of you who are looking for new sources of income, here is yeah, that's right, my little notifications at the top. I can see when people are liking or whatever on the video. So this is pretty cool. This very attractive middle-aged man, very distinguished. I guess if I wore a hat I might look kind of cool like him. He rents himself out to young women for 1,000 yen for company. It's called Osan Rental. Oh wait, where is that? We're not getting a link. Where's the linkages? Okay, so that blog is down at the moment. There's a Japanese version of this blog as well, but basically it's a couple of guys. Apparently this guy just was keeping old ladies even young ladies company, and just some people discovered that they like just having a middle-aged dude to go out to lunch and chat and have a coffee with for an hour. So 1,000 yen an hour. He just hangs out and chats with girls. It's funny, there's a very, very big economy in Japan, as most of you may be aware. Apparently it is non-sexual rent, that's what I would assume. It is just to hang out and go out in public. There's a very, very big economy for non-sexual renting per se. You know, there's the hostess things where you go and a woman pays you drinks and listens to your jokes. And people pay a lot of money for that in Japan. And there is the reverse as well. There are host bars. You go into a bar, of course, and have, you know, men pour women who pay drinks and so on. But this is just something, again, this guy's found a niche. Apparently I'm trying to remember the full story actually, but the blog is down at the moment. But yeah, apparently some people found that he was a good conversationalist to have around. I guess there are situations that young women might want to be seen in public with a you know, middle-aged dude. I don't know, make someone look jealous or whatever, but apparently it is all very innocent and above board, and it's out, and, you know, the idea is just go for a coffee or a restaurant or whatever. But yes, you can pay someone to hang out with and spend some time with. And I guess, I mean, obviously he can't be a dick to you if you're paying him, even if it's just 1,000 yen. So why not? You know, I guess it depends on how you're looking at it. So I see Canada Jin 3 is saying that 1,000 yen is cheap, and it is cheap. I mean, I guess it depends on what you're paying for. You are just paying for someone to sit with you for a coffee. I wonder what they do actually with the coffee itself, whether the person pays for the coffee and stuff as well, or whether they split the bill, or how that works. But I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking of quitting my day job. This is, I don't know. I mean, in a big way, seriously, if PDR did this, you know, he could probably make more money off this than YouTube. I don't know. But there again, but someone like him, you see, he should go work as a host. He'd make heaps of money. They might get upset, of course. And maybe this would be more permissible. I don't know. It's just interesting. I saw some people when I posted this was coming to, which I don't think is the case. I think this is legit and interesting. Yes, next one is interesting. It's about the 15 most funded startups in Japan, and I don't actually know what a lot of these are when I was just flicking through, but let's have a look, because it's kind of these are things that you might want to look up. The link, of course, is in my Facebook magazine. The link to my Facebook, to my Flipboard magazine, is below in the video information to this, so you can go and check these out for yourself. Oh, Kiri Washington got bachelor's degree tomorrow, a step closer to getting a job in Japan. Awesome. Yes, because the bachelor's degree is awesome just for that minimum of getting in and being eligible to teach or to, you know, join a lot of companies. So that is really great that you got your BA. Congratulations, Kiri. See, this is what I love about being able to see the comments. So I can react and do all that sort of stuff. Ben Duncan. He's an attractive man, what can I say? So we've got these we have these startups. I don't know how well you know these ones, but it's got a little bit of a description of what these are. The most funded, this is an order of most funded to least funded, but these are startups in Japan, best funded. MetaTaps, which is a monetization platform that offers an online payment solution called Spike, which I haven't heard of before. Next one is Raksul, which actually sounds kind of Korean. It's saying it connects users with printing needs to thousands of printing companies. Oh, you know what? I might have used that when I got my Meishi, my Hikosaemon Meishi done. And that's pretty cool actually, because Japan has a lot of really lot of small kind of old-fashioned printers. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yes, right. You're renting me for free. That's right. That's right. You got me for an hour for free. See, I'm good value. What can I say? What else we got? Smart News, which is an award-winning mobile news app that's powered by intelligent machine learning algorithms. I don't know if that's actually a normal web app or if it's Android or iOS or whatever, but yeah, I think I've seen this before. I don't like algorithm-based news apps, however. As you know, I'm very picky about what news I like to show. Spyber, inspired by spider silk, Spyber utilizes next-generation biomaterials for medical and humanitarian applications. Okay, so this is this biomedical. So this is kind of a non-tech. Well, it's kind of tech, but biotech related. Mercari. I don't know any of these actually. Just looking through this. Mercari is Japan's biggest community-powered shopping app. It allows users to buy and sell anything from anywhere in seconds. Well, that sounds interesting. It does sound a bit like Yahoo Auctions, which is the number one. It's like the eBay of Japan is Yahoo Auctions. Although I haven't heard much about that in a while, so I don't know. This might be interesting. Actually, I'm moving house as well. I've got lots of crap here to get rid of, so that's kind of cool. Star Festival is a Tokyo-based lunch delivery and catering service. Well, there's a few online good delivery kind of services there. Yes, Robzy B is asking, Haku means white. Shiro or Haku. Haku is the Chinese reading for Shiro, but you can use either reading for white. Yeah, and you know what? There were the paid white people in China. I think I meant to have that in here somewhere. There was an interesting feature of that on BBC recently, wasn't there? Anyway, what else we got? Lacondo JP, which is a e-commerce platform for apparel and shoes. Gengo is a provider of people-powered translation services on a global scale. Okay, so this is a translation, but people-powered, so it's human-based translation, which automated translation isn't up to, so that's pretty cool. Money Forward, which is personal accounting solutions that enable... so you know what? I think I might have used this. I think there's an app that they have out, which I've used, which is pretty cool. Just to be managing personal expenses, kind of, and accounting stuff. Origami, a mobile marketplace that allows brands to connect with their fans while leveraging viral marketing for new customer acquisition. Origami, I haven't heard of that. That sounds interesting, but yeah. Couple more. We've got Sansun, which is cloud-based contact management services Antenna, which is operates content curation platform, which again, there's a software as a service. ASAAS is a cloud-based accounting system for professional accounting firms. So it's interesting they've got software as a service kind of as their name and their accounting service. But anyway. Minokura, which is a flexible, customizable, adaptable network infrastructure for enterprise through network virtualization. Well, you know what? The sad thing is I actually know what that means. But it's enterprise's business. It's commercial. It's not normal. And the final one, number 15, is Tokyo Otaku Mode. That sounds very Danny Chu. The Tokyo Otaku Mode delivers latest news and goods from Japanese anime, games, manga, and more. Well, that actually sounds like something that would appeal... Oh, that's not what I wanted. To a lot of my users. To a lot of the people who follow. That's about the only one that really seems to appeal, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Tokyo Otaku Mode, that sounds kind of interesting. And they look like they're very well funded, so there you go. By the way, these amounts, so what is that? That is, it's got the US dollar amount. Okay, so I don't have to do the conversion. Lucky. So 16 million, well that's a good amount of money anyway. So yes, I can't believe it's not butter if he sucks. Okay, distracted by a comment there. By the way, Ronin Ushinawa, good to see you. And I don't recognize your handle name, so indeed, good to see you there. Oh, and you read this article the other day. Okay, so yes, it's always good to see names I'm not that familiar with as well. I mentioned, so actually this is what, I photographed that thing about the free Wi-Fi today. I'd already put a story in here actually that the free Wi-Fi is now available not only in Korakuen Station where I took that today, but it's also available, by the way, thank you Emily Louise Maitland for liking the video. It's also the free Wi-Fi is available on the Tohoku Shinkansen, the very cool looking green E7 train. And inside Tokyo's Yamanote Line stations, the whole Yamanote Line around Tokyo now has free Wi-Fi, and a lot of the Tokyo Metro stations do as well. In fact, this is on Rocket News. I wonder if they've got an update of the overall situation. Oh, sorry, that was an E5, not an E7. The E7 is red. I forgot that. My son hasn't been so much into trains lately, so I'm not so up to date. The number is really, really growing anyway for online, so free Wi-Fi. So it is. Tokyo is already very, very conveniently free Wi-Fi enabled. Scott Munger's asking, am I going to load up any new Tokyo Tonight, or is that dead? Well, this is Tokyo Tonight. So, I don't know what you mean by that question, Scott Munger. Yeah, I'm a little bit confused by that. Anyway, this is a great topic. This was featured on BBC Capital, and I thought this was kind of interesting. It talks about a phenomenon that I've talked about before, and that anyone who's really been to Japan. Hey, Antonio Fox, good to see you, and Renee Hauptmann, good to see you as well. New viewer, and good to see Antonio Fox back. This is a topic I've talked about before, actually. Culture shock and reverse culture shock. And it's really funny because as a lot of people here talk about exactly what I talk about when I talk about this, which is that there's a few case studies of different expats, people who have been to live overseas for a few years and they come back, in this case, to the UK, and they talk about how it's funny, you'll experience some culture shock in Japan, but the whole nature of culture shock is that it's a shock. It's something that's unexpected. It's something that you find very stressful and hard to deal with because it's different and you aren't ready for it. It's shocking to you. There's a thing about when you come to a place like Japan, in most cases you will know that you will find everything there to be strange. So it's not really a shock per se. You're kind of dealing with everything consciously knowing that this is new, need to adapt to this, need to learn this, need to understand this. You will get a little bit tripped up with Japan if you come to Japan with a very strong preconceived idea of what Japan is. And this is something that a lot of the anime and the manga fans and so on might get. People who have a very certain perspective on Japan of how they think it's going to be can get a little bit disappointed and shocked, I think, when they come in, they see it. But most people don't know what to expect, and they come here knowing that they don't know. So that's cool. But what messes them up is that they come here and they learn and they adapt to Japan. And two things happen when you're in Japan. The first thing is that over time you become used to Japan, and what's normal in Japan becomes kind of normal. Actually, three things happen. Another thing is that you assume that nothing has changed back at home in the time that you're gone. And the third thing that happens is that actually, in the absence of any up-to-date knowledge of what's going on back home, or even the memory of what home was back a few years ago, you form a more and more idealized idea of what home is. You assume that everything that is intuitive about, when you see something that feels intuitively wrong in Japan, you assume that the opposite is true, and that somehow that the reason I find this wrong is because where I'm from, nobody would do this much overtime where I'm from. No one does overtime in New Zealand. No one, vegetables are cheap in New Zealand. The vegetables here, they feel expensive because in New Zealand they're so cheap. So I go back to New Zealand, and the vegetables are now the same price as Japan almost. People do crazy overtime, and I don't know, all of these things that I assumed, these false assumptions I had about New Zealand and Australia, you go back and you find out that you actually get more of a shock from going home and discovering, one, that home has changed a lot since you left, and it's not the same. You go back expecting everything to feel comfortable. You expect it to be like putting on, a comfortable glove or an old pair of pajamas or something, that everything, when actually, the pajamas have shrunk and fashion's changed, and, OJ killed his wife and the glove won't fit anymore because it shrank, and all that sort of stuff. And it ends up that you come back, and when I went back to Australia 2 years ago, and everyone was covered in tattoos, and I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, seriously. I remember the first time I went back to Australia, people were like staring at me, and I never remembered everyone staring at me before. But I've become so accustomed to being in a society where people don't make a lot of eye contact, that when I went back to Australia and people are just slack-jawed, just looking at everybody, I was feeling really uncomfortable. I found it so stressful to go back because your acclimatization to your new country can cause this expat shock. And I love it. There's a few good stories here of people coming from other countries, people from China, for example, and it's funny, there's one guy in particular, I think this last case, this Jim Boyles guy, who talks about how first he hated China, and then but when he went home he missed China, and then he went back to China after that, and then he realized, okay, China wasn't so good. But it's kind of funny, as you adapt. It becomes your grass is greener. Idealizations change, and so yes, indeed, it's interesting. And Kang and Kodos is there saying, I'm right, 14 hours and on a salary. Man, that sucks you're not getting paid the overtime for it. I hope you're getting a decent salary at least. But yeah, no, so I was doing the same thing in Japan. I was doing it on a shit salary as well. But I was assuming only Japan is like this. You know, this feels wrong, so surely if I think it's wrong, people from my culture would never accept this, but we do. And in fact, I discovered later that Americans are even crazier working, I think, than Japanese. So yeah, interesting article there and some good examples actually, non-Japan examples, but examples I can definitely relate to and can tell you to expect these. And the only way to not suffer this is to expect it. But it is really, I think, actually with the reverse culture shock or the expat shock at coming home is harder to avoid actually, because you do forget. It's hard. I mean, I guess if you stay really in touch with what's going on, it's possible. But anyway, 2 articles in Japanese here. The top one is talking about how as there are more and more foreign tourists now, particularly Chinese tourists. It's kind of funny actually. Whenever NHK does a story on increasing numbers of tourists, they always like to come and find Westerners. The truth is that, you know, the Westerners are like 10% of the tourists that are coming. It's all Chinese and Korean and Southeast Asians and so on that are coming to Japan. But I guess it's kind of hard to pick those out of a crowd. You wouldn't want to guess the NHK people. Maybe they don't want to pick someone wrong, pick a Japanese person and say, so are you a Chinese tourist? Or something like that. It's easier if you can pick just a German person or someone like that. But yeah, there are at the moment, between the cheap yen, the increased tourist infrastructure, and and the increasing wealth and standard of living of places like China, Japan is getting flooded with tourists, and they're going, as I was saying in the start of this video, they're going to all these towns and remote locations, and those places don't have the infrastructure to deal with all of these tourists. All of a sudden, they're there, they're spending money, they're boosting the economy, it's good for everybody, but and Scott Munger is saying on SoundCloud, now I can't remember what you're talking about, so now I'm like, what are you talking about on SoundCloud? Boom, 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 boom. Oh, I'm trying to remember what your comment was now, because there was something I didn't understand. Tokyo Tonight. I get it. I haven't been uploading Tokyo Tonight on SoundCloud because, one, it's a little bit of a pain to do, and two, the fact even when I wasn't doing it, nobody was commenting about that. So I assumed, and the ones that I put up didn't get very many listens. So to tell the truth, it's a mix of laziness and non-pickup. Also, I was hoping that if I did it, I'd get a podcasting authorization from SoundCloud, which I didn't get. So I'll come back to this, but I'll come back to the topic I was just talking about. But yes, with the SoundCloud thing, I mean, if all of you really want me to keep... by the way, good night, Jason. Good night, Jason. If you want me to keep uploading the audio versions of this onto SoundCloud and people listen to it, I'll do it. But... if I'm only going to get 10 views, it takes about, to do the capture and the upload and the information and the tagging and everything, it takes a bit of time actually, and I'm not in front of the PC at home very often anymore, only for this video pretty much. Scott Munger, if you and some friends want to listen to it, and let me know, I will reboot it, but... yeah, I'm sorry. I've been a bit lazy with it, but I've also, in my laziness, I noticed that there weren't so many people asking for it. So sorry about that, but I'm willing to revisit it and to bring them back again. By the way, Rodin Ushinawa is asking, do I properly populate my SoundCloud link on every other social networking outlet? That's a good question. It's on my YouTube videos, on my SoundCloud. It's in the video information below this, and I'll put a video information card at the top of this video. I don't know if it might not be on my Facebook. I'm pretty sure it's on my Facebook and my Twitter. I should actually do that more actually, because I am putting a lot of music and stuff on there which I like people to listen to. So yeah, I might look at my SoundCloud strategy, and thank you for raising that. So yes, indeed. Coming back to the tourist thing, what this Japanese title is saying is that among increasing foreign tourists, 増える外国人観光客、ガイドが足りない. There aren't enough tour guides. This is an article just talking about how with the increasing numbers of tourists, 13 million achieved last year, 20 million the target for 2020, and there aren't enough people who speak foreign languages to be tour guides to all these increasing tourists anymore. And I'm not wearing white socks. It's a dirty lie. Well, not exactly. I'm barefoot. Actually, I'm the barefoot bandit. Here, check that out. One for the fetishists. So yes, so that's job opportunities. If you want to be a tour guide in rural Japan, I think actually right now there's probably jobs not just in teaching but in working in tourism. It's an interesting option if you're coming here on a working holiday visa and you want to try something other than just being an English teacher, or you want to do the English teaching and try something else. There's opportunities here. There's a shortage of people, particularly in rural parts of Japan, in tourist mecca type areas for tour guides who speak English and Chinese, obviously, and Korean and other languages. So yes, indeed, go opportunity there. That's why I put that there. So go check. Maybe it's something to look into for opportunities to go looking for. Gaijin, but I never fully understood what was wrong with white socks myself. But in New Zealand, it's like a real major no. Which I found out through a harsh experience that I related in my video on the meltdown video and in the final cut of the Hanami summary that I did in the YouTube space with Victor. Home Tokyo, I hope that made your night. Tokyo 05, indeed. Oh, do you need to be certified for that? Well, I don't know, you maybe get certified. I mean, I know plenty of Japanese who are in New Zealand who are working as tour guides. So yeah. The second article written below, this is actually talking about, I've got the English thing about this somewhere else in here, but there was a 187 international Japanese history academics gave a letter in support of Japanese history academics who are feeling pressured recently to revise or basically to suppress historical publishing or information about comfort women and inconvenient aspects of Japanese history. So they put a letter out in support for the brave historians that are still trying to be historians in a difficult political climate. So this is the article, the second article below is called Rekishi ga Kenkyu Kai, so Historian Association. Seimei Seifu Shuno, was that Toshu? Seifu Shuno と一部マスメディアによる日本軍慰安婦問題について不当な見解を批判する。So this is Japanese coverage of the foreign historians, which are talking about how the government and certain sectors of the media are putting inappropriate pressure on people, media and historians regarding the comfort women problem, which I'll come back to. Actually, I've got an English article on this a bit later, which I can come and talk about. And actually, this is something as well that Tetsuga was asking me to mention actually in the video. So I will come back to this actually. But yes, there is Victor put up 2 videos this week. Oh, you know what? I didn't put the meltdown video in here. But yes, one is, go and check out and give me a flake, man. One is of me getting very angry talking about the Hanami. Which I said don't publish it, but Victor, he came and called me. He said the video is really funny, it's really good. Can I please publish it? And I was like, okay, you can publish it. And this other video is actually Victor was doing a lesson with Tomoko on the YouTube space, and I showed up, but I was downstairs waiting for someone from the YouTube desk in the YouTube space to come and let me into the building, and no one would come, and I kept calling when I was coming. They were just down there. I'll sit them down again. They came down. 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes, there was no one there, and it turned out that the person who came down was told by Victor to look for someone who was fat with long hair, and so they didn't come up to me. And when I came up, the reception lady looked at me all surprised. I was like, well, why do I look so, I've been here before, why do I look so surprised? He's, no, because we told the person that, we were told that you would be fat and long haired. So when I walked in the middle of Victor recording this Japanese with Tomoko, I was in a slightly bad mood. I was telling Victor, are you trolling me by asking the reception to go and only let a person in the building who's long-haired and fat? That was funny. And Yes, that happened in the middle of recording that video, and then I started taking my clothes off, which was off camera, but Victor actually took a photo, which I didn't know he'd taken. I'd never seen that photo. I saw him click, and he actually put that on the video as well. So, yes, Victor has lots of incriminating stuff, but whatever. Hey, well, wait a minute, Tokyo Sam, he did a great job on Hanami, and that's all I wanted to say. I didn't want to say he's Hitler, but I just wanted to say he did a good job on Hanami, which he did. But yes, it wasn't actually Sam at all that triggered me off on that. It was various. I was getting stressed out by having a lot of people sending me angry messages the day before about my association with the Hanami from people who weren't planning to join, which I found extremely. Once or twice I can tolerate, but 20 or 30 males was extremely aggravating. Is what it is. Anyway, I'm over it. I'm over it. All of that. Now that the video's out, it might come up again. It was a good video. Anyway. So yes, for those of you who are going to Hakone, there's an interesting situation happening at the moment. Hakone is what is Hakone? Hakone, if you're from New Zealand or Australia, it's the Rotorua. It's one of the Rotorua type areas of Japan. It's a geothermal wonderland near Mount Fuji, about an hour south of Tokyo by express train. It's a famous onsen resort. It's a historical onsen resort area near Tokyo that you can go there on a day trip, go hang out in an onsen, have some nice dinner, go back. Major tourist area. A lot of expats like to go down there. They've got these geothermal sulfur sort of fields, a lot like we have in New Zealand. I mean, Japan and New Zealand are geologically very similar. And apparently someone noticed that last week there was a lot more steam coming out than usual, and there's a lot more. It was getting a lot hotter, and then there were small volcanic earthquakes that started happening. I think they've had up to like 200 a day. Last week they had one or two ones which were actually big enough that you could actually feel them. Most of them are micro, little micro-aggression type quakes, little micro quakes. Shindo 1, on the scale 1 to 5. 1 is basically a shake that's basically not detectable to a human. 2 is basically the smallest that you can feel or notice. Today there were a number of Shindo 2s. What is apparently happening? So everyone's saying, oh, Hakone is going to explode and blow up. Apparently, indeed, there's a particular valley in Hakone at the moment which has risen by 6 centimeters. They've detected increased pressure on the water. So what the situation is that 10,000 meters down, there is a magma chamber below all this mountain, and it's near Mount Fuji. I mean, this is where the magma comes up, but it's still 10 kilometers. It's deeper than Mount Everest below. And so you've got the magma chamber, and then you've got, just on the surface, you've got all this water, and so on, underground water, which gets heated by the stuff below, and it produces this geothermal field. And geysers, onsen, stuff like that. All of these earthquakes are happening either very shallow, only in the water and geothermal heated areas. There's one or two deep ones that happen 5 kilometers down, but what everyone is assuming is that there's pressure that's happening from 10 kilometers down, and it's applying pressure above. But in spite of that, apparently the people who are monitoring this are saying that it's not perceived to be at risk of a major kind of eruption, not like not a caldera, not a building a mountain exploding type eruption, because the magma chamber is still too deep down. However, there is volcanic activity, and there is a risk of a small eruption. Now, when you're living in a Yellowstone Park type geothermal area, and you start getting the volcanic eruption warning system elevated, and the area around this where this activity is happening, there's a ropeway that goes over it that you can see that's been shut down. A couple of roads and so on nearby this have been closed down. Hakone is still operating. The thing is, Hakone is a tourist town, and this started during Golden Week, so a lot of the tourist operators down there, the only thing they wanted to say on the news is that there's one little area that's just a little bit, it's nothing, but that's just a little bit. We just roped it off for some safety. It's annoying that we had to do it during Golden Week, but everything is fine. So they're not really being that proactive about advertising that Hakone is turning into a volcanic situation. There is information in the Japanese language and the weather, and it's been the top news on NHK for the last few nights, but the information hasn't really been taken up in English. And apparently the news has been covering that a lot of foreign tourists have been showing up in Hakone expecting to go and see these geothermal fields, and being told that they can't go to them because they weren't getting any information in English. So because there wasn't any information, these tourists are getting very annoyed that they were taking the trip all the way down there and finding out that they couldn't go and see what they wanted to see. Apparently now the Hakone town, they're preparing these English leaflets on explaining the situation. However, again, because they want people to stay and they want everyone to know it's all right, these leaflets are not very friendly. They're very long and detailed, and they're basically saying it's all fine, it's all fine. It's a bit like the TEPCO guide to the Fukushima meltdown type information that they're getting. So here's the thing: it isn't. Hakone as a town is dependent on tourism, and there's still plenty of touristy things you can do down there. That said, the mountain that Hakone is on an elevated volcanic eruption warning, and people are expecting a small volcanic eruption that could affect the local area. Is possible. There are ongoing small earthquakes, and the area in one of the valleys and the main ropeway is closed down at the moment. However, you can go down there and still enjoy an onsen. Hopefully the onsen won't get too hot. I don't know, anything could happen. So Hakone itself is not closed, but it is in an elevated volcanic risk alert situation. And as much as I feel sorry for the businesses and so on down there who are affected by this, it's a volcano, and in the end of the day, sure, the shops are still open down there and they need tourist dollars, but at the same time, maybe this isn't the best trip to be planning a trip down to Hakone right now. There is now more information available in English, and go and check it out, but be aware that there is a volcanic alert going on down there, and it's not the best place that you want to be during an eruption. Even though everyone insists the risks of that are low, but because there isn't much information about that, I want to get that out there. What else we got here? So this is the thing I was just talking about before, the open letter in support of historians in Japan. This is the 187 foreign Japan history experts in support of the Japanese Reiki-sen, the Japanese historian association thing. That they're a letter of support, basically, against this kind of tide of perceived pressure by the government, well, not just by the government, but certainly led by perceived to be led by the Abe cabinet, of starting with the Asahi retraction of a discredited story about the comfort women, relating to the comfort women phenomenon. People have kind of seized on that, both within the government and within particularly the Sankei and the Yomiuri, the conservative newspapers in Japan. But also a lot of kind of nutjob left-wingers have really gone after personally attacking, really like physically threatening the families and death threats against journalists involved in this, which is creating an atmosphere of intimidation around people trying to have what right-wingers would call a self-torturous view of history, which is, by others an honest and open and reflective view of history. So, yes, it's been a difficult week, and there's actually I ended up having an interesting exchange with Hiroko Tabuchi of the New York Times on Twitter the other night, which I've got her article down here as well somewhere, which I'll feature in a minute, and I'll talk about that conversation around this. But yeah, it's an interesting situation with what's happening. There is a perception, I think, that is still overblown by the press, and I know that people like Jake Edelstein and others who think that Abe is an ex-Hitler, and they think, I think people are overblowing the risk of Abe per se. He's a sensible guy. The whole thing about the speech to the Congress, how he went there and he said that he basically reaffirms all of the previous statements, including the 25 apologies, including a specific comfort women apology, and the Asian Women's Fund, which was set up with the help of the government and had signed letters by former Prime Minister at the time, who was the Prime Minister at the time, to comfort women, to pay them compensation. And a lot of countries are kind of testing Abe by seeing if he's going to give a new apology every time he gets up to talk. And he's saying he's not trying to undermine, well, everyone's saying he's going to rewrite the old apologies, or he's going to cancel those out, or issue a new thing which is going to undermine that. And he's going up and he's doing the right thing every time he's saying, I reaffirm the statements of the other prime ministers about the subject. But at the same time, he's definitely not lingering on it, and he doesn't want to linger on how terrible Japan was under the government during the war, that his dad was in the cabinet. But at the same time, I'm not convinced that he's gone full Nazi like a lot of the Western media here say that they are. But there is no question that a lot of extreme right-wing people are feeling very emboldened about this. Also, to put that in perspective as well, the extreme right-wingers, the people issuing the death threats and the real extremists online, these are the people to the right wing, on the right wing of the LDP. These are, these are the extreme nationalists. They have a political party that kind of represents their views. It's called the Next Generation Party. It's kind of ironically named because its leads are all very, very old. They poll like in 0.1, if that, percent on NHK polls. I don't think they won a single local seat. They only put 6 people out of like thousands of seats in the recent local elections. They didn't get one person in. So, you're talking about a really, really small minority of extremists that are actually making these sort of death threats and so on. But I think there is no question that they feel like Abe is their guy, and they're feeling empowered to do that. And that's that's that atmosphere that this letter is talking to. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the exchange with Hiroko Tabuchi, which is very interesting when I get to the article about it. The article at the bottom of the screen, apparently, Rainichi Gaikokujin no Hanzai peak toki no 3 分の1. Apparently, the peak of foreigner crime in Japan, something the Japan Times always rushes to point out, is that the foreign crime statistics in Japan, which show elevated crime rates among foreigners against Japanese, include immigration offences. So immigration offences can only be committed by foreigners. So the rate, if you include that they're eligible to more crimes, then there's always going to be that working against. Apparently, if you cut out all the immigration offences and you only make it crimes that both Japanese and foreigners can do, the foreign crime rate is below that of the average population, but it's boosted by the immigration thing. However, that said, increasing number of foreigners, and the Japanese police agency has for years been talking about the amount of foreign crime increasing and the need to battle it. And apparently 2010, let me just check the year actually, the supposed peak of foreign crime, which wasn't that long ago, this year has registered 1/3, and this is at a time that there are 13 million tourists. There's more foreigners coming to Japan than ever, more immigrants, more people. They're extending the visa duration periods. In fact, you know what, that's probably why. That just occurred to me. That's probably the reason. They only had like 1 year or 3 year working visas before. Now the working visas are 5 years. They're extending the visas. They're giving more permanent residence. So there are less immigration offences probably, because people are on long. This is probably the impact of those longer visas coming into effect. That would explain part of it anyway. But in any case, for all the hysteria around foreign crime, which Japan is like every other country. Apparently, there we go. So 10 years ago, which was the peak 10 years ago, 2005. Recorded crimes are now 1/3 of that, even though there are way more foreigners now than 2005. So that's an interesting stat. Oculus Rift is confirmed it's coming in 2016. You can see it right there. Apparently Facebook is going to be subsidizing it. It should be affordable. And between this and the HoloLens from Microsoft, there's some cool stuff. I tried out myself, as I mentioned the other day, the Microsoft Gear headset as well. Being able to watch the 360-degree videos that I shoot. Oh, and and I mentioned on last week's show how GoPro looks like they're almost certainly going to be coming out with a spherical video. Oh, Daniel Piff mentions the election, the UK election. I should mention that. I haven't put that on the agenda, but I'll come to that. In fact, I'll do that now. Oculus Rift is awesome, and I'm probably going to go and get one, and I can't wait for it. And I'm not going to be using it for games. I'm going to be using it for virtualized offices and that sort of stuff. That's what I think is going to be cool about that, provided they have a sufficiently high-resolution screen. UK election 2015, fascinating result, wasn't it? And so New Zealand is funny. We used to have an electoral system, the exact same as the UK system, and just like the UK, we had a Labour Party. We have a Labour Party still as the main left wing, and instead of the Conservatives, we have a party called the National Party, which is the current government, which is the Republicans and Democrats, or it's the left wing, right wing equivalent in New Zealand was this. And under this, having the same system as the UK, New Zealand had a system where the only representatives were people who could win a race for a specific seat, which meant that you'd have situations like in America with the Perot Party. You could have someone who could come second in every single seat and get 30 or 40% of the votes and not have a single representative if that support is equally distributed. So what we did in New Zealand was we switched to a mixed member proportional system, which was where you still elect local representatives, but you also have a party list, and the distribution of party power is ultimately decided by the list rather than the representatives. Although if you're a small party and you get a representative in, then you get a little bit of a bonus representation from that. And I think the New Zealand system, I mean, we looked at the flaws of the electoral system that the UK has, and we figured out the best way to fix it was the German system, and we switched. So because we went through a couple of referendums and we thought a lot about how to improve the electoral system, it means I always look at elections in Australia and America and Britain through the lens of having looked closely at the system. So the UK system is the old-fashioned first-past-the-post system. And under that, a couple of interesting things happen. One, it's really unusual in a first-past-the-post system that a party doesn't win an outright majority. It doesn't win 50% of the seats. Although that was what was apparently being predicted ahead of the election, right? That no party, again, as was happening before, that there'd have to be a coalition, which is something you associate with proportional systems, where lots of parties, where the Conservatives would only get 35% of the vote and they'd need 2 or 3 friends to help you govern. So everyone is expecting, I think, some sort of a coalition, and people are talking about the Scots and Labour possibly being able to get enough seats together to be able to kick out, to displace the Conservative government. What's really interesting is that, of course, on the vote, 37% of people voted for Conservative, and they got an outright majority in the Parliament, which is about right under a first-past-the-post system. 13% of people voted for the UKIP party, Independence Party, which I tweeted a little bit about. Apparently, while they're very sensitive about not wanting to be called a rebranded version of the British National Party, which is a far-right party, basically a skinhead party in the UK. From what I understand, I'm British, I don't really care, but I find it fascinating that 50% of the population voted either Tory or UKIP, particularly when you think that UK is going to have a referendum on staying in the EU happening, 2017? Based on that result, based on the 50% Tory and UKIP, it almost seems pretty certain, and that how many people voted for the Scottish Nationalist Party, UK is probably going to be leaving the EU. So that's interesting. And it turns out that it looks like UK voters are much more right-wing than I was expecting, or that anyone was expecting, maybe more right-wing than Australia, for example. My sister, became a British citizen, she's very pro-Labour and she's very upset. I must admit, I kind of trolled her a little bit on Facebook, saying, hey look, it looks like UK has become more right-wing than Australia, which I think it kind of has. It's funny, but yeah, so I was going to say 13% of the vote, but they only got 1 seat. So I know a lot of people who would advocate for a proportional system would not advocate for the UKIP per se. They wouldn't advocate for a right-wing party. But again, I think I still think those 13% of the people who voted for UKIP only got 1 representative. That still suggests to me that the system is broken. I mean, maybe those people voted knowing that their vote was a throwaway vote and they knew that it wasn't going to get represented. And maybe if they knew the vote was going to count, they wouldn't have voted for that. Some people might argue that. But at the same time, what's happened in truth is that those 13% of the population have no representation except for one guy. The Scots got 5% of the vote, something like that. Or they got 12% of the vote, but they got 56 seats. And they're going to vote. They're going to force another referendum to secede from the UK, and that's interesting as well. So fascinating election result. Actually, I wasn't giving it much. I found it really hard to get excited about it. I found the Vice News videos about the UK election to be really interesting in advance, although again they had a very kind of a liberal focus. What I find, there's a phenomenon which I was tweeting about actually, what I find most interesting is that there's a phenomenon, hasn't happened so much in America, but it's definitely happened in Canada, from what I understand, Australia, New Zealand, happened in Japan. All of these Labour parties and left-wing parties have kind of fallen from grace, and they're in a position that I think they don't understand why they're not able to win power back at the moment. And I think the reason is very simple. It's that all of them have not come to terms with the fact that they've all sold out their principles, basically. In trying to capture the centre vote, a lot of the like Labour under Tony Blair, or Labour in Australia or New Zealand, a lot of these other countries, a lot of these Labour governed countries went to the Iraq War. They went to Afghanistan. They they got into the Iraq War in particular, a war that people think they shouldn't have got into. A lot of my friends who are socialist Brits think that Tony Blair should be tried for war crimes. Plus, he had a very right-wing, neoliberal economic policy as well. Again, as all of them did, they all became kind of conservatives. So they became conservatives both in terms of wars and economics, and they kind of sold their constituents down the river. The Liberal Dems, by the way, deserve to get destroyed for screwing the students by the sounds of it, that they broke their promises to the students who boosted them in the last election, so they deserved it. And Paddy Ashdown, would be interesting to see him eat his head. But this is the thing I talk about with Japan. This is relevant to Japan. The Democrats in Japan, they got kicked out because they completely sold out everything that they were supposed to be standing for. And I'm very curious because I just saw a tweet come by from Sug Life, which is Travis Moore, and I want to see what that was. So here it is. Let me just drag this across. The neck's a bit long, but thank you. I like that, Travis Moore. I'm not sure. Actually, I shouldn't be giving your identity away. I mean, Sug Life. Thank you for that. So anyway, the point is that they don't understand why they got voted out last time. That's the point, and they're still hoping to get back in by default by people not liking the conservatives or the right-wing parties, when they don't actually realize that they've actually really alienated their own voters. I think that's the problem. I think there is a gap. There's an open gap for a viable left-wing party. That these left-wing parties that supported the Iraq War and so on are not considered anymore to be credible alternatives to their old voters, and that's why I think Labour lost. And that's the same with the Democrats in Japan. Same with Labour in New Zealand. There's just not seen to be a good alternative at the moment. That's my interpretation of that. Anyway, that's interesting. Get this back. We are over time, so we'll see what else we've got here. Oh man, this hurts so bad. So basically, Saitama. Saitama is, it's a bed town outside of Tokyo. It's a separate prefecture north of Tokyo, where a lot of the low-income workers of Tokyo live in and commute to Tokyo from. And it's got this kind of nickname of Dasaitama. Dasai is a term in Japanese which means lame. So if you can imagine, this is a place called Aim Town, but everyone calls it Lame Town. Well, Saitama, but people call it Dasaitama. So apparently in a wonderful marketing initiative, possibly by people who worked in the Labour electoral campaigns in the UK, they came to Japan and they thought, well, why don't we get famous people doing a cool pose representing Saitama Prefecture to get away from the idea that Saitama is lame, to combat this image. And apparently they got these famous people to do these sort of poses. And where else are they? Here's another one. Yeah, they're all doing this kind of pose, this kind of gangster pose. See, Saitama isn't lame anymore, everyone. Saitama is cured. It's not the Saitama anymore. Now they're all doing this. It's gangster. See this? Saitama is gangster. Saitama, stop it. Stop it. You're killing me, Saitama. Don't do it. Just don't go there. Oh man, there's so many good topics. Why Japanese is hard and English is easy. And by the way, that's I see Canadajin is quoting my throwaway quick description of Saitama, but it's considered a bed town where people have cheap rent and they can commute to Tokyo from. And because it's a bed town image from Tokyo, it doesn't have a very cool independent image from Tokyo, unlike Yokohama, for example, that is got its own, it's close, but people in Yokohama tend to work in Yokohama, whereas people in Saitama tend to work in Tokyo. Nice article. You're just talking about basically pronunciation. No question, Japanese is much simpler pronunciation than English. So there's that. Syllable, it's getting very grammatical, but yes, morphology. Grammar, Japanese grammar is so simple, English grammar sucks, and it's mixed up from lots of different languages. Vocabulary battle, although Japanese believe that they have much more words than English. Japanese has, I think, fewer words actually, because we've got so many loan words, and plus the Japanese loan words are only from Chinese pretty much, or Chinese and Korean, but with the writing systems there's no kind of mix of ancient Greek and ancient Portuguese and so on. English versus Japanese versus everyone else, including native learners, and the writing systems. I think English has got it over Japanese in writing systems. Japanese, I think, has the worst writing system in the world, actually, because it's their own people can't learn how to read and write it. But I think for speaking, I think Japanese is easier than English, and it's all there in Tofugu, and Tofugu is awesome. This was just cool, kind of random, but Freightliner just revealed the first real road legal autonomous big rig trucks that drive themselves, so they don't have to have truck drivers on crystal meth to stay awake anymore. good idea. I'm really looking forward actually to the age of robot cows being big. I think that's something that's got to happen. I think down the bottom, apparently there is a committee looking into allowing middle names on family registers in Japan. This is something which I think is happening partly because of the number of Brazilian Japanese, Nikkei Japanese, have come back to Japan and are renaturalizing in Japan. Yes, and the person he was talking about, it could be a way to hide kira names and so on, embarrassing names. It's obviously what happens with embarrassing names for people in Western countries. That is Hakone exploding. Apparently a survey done by, who was the survey done by? Was it done by NHK? Somebody did a survey, and they found that 1 in 13 Japanese admitted in the survey response to being part of a sexual minority, i.e. LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual. Which, I think statistics say 1 in 5 or something like that, but it says something about the population that even, 1 in 13 will respond to a survey and saying that they are, that, maybe this is coming forward, oh man, and this is the best story, and we're so over time, let me just, oh god, we're so out of time. Okay. Great blog here by Texan in Tokyo, talking about how she had a breakdown in the Levi's changing room in rural Japan, and it's basically about this whole phenomenon that Japanese clothes and everything, wearable stuff, is made for Japanese people and Japanese body types. Japanese have a different diet, they have a different genetic profile, that means that they often have different body shapes, particularly to Westerners. We're built differently from a different millions of years of different development. So it's kind of funny because there is a grass is greener aspect of this as well. A lot of men will come and attest that they love coming here and seeing women with like model type skinny bums, and women here are slim, and it all looks very, very good to guys who are coming from countries where people are not like that. On the reverse, Japanese women, they actually buy underwear with like pads on the back to make it look like they have shapely bums. They have this problem that they feel like they feel like little boys trying to wear women's clothes. Like if they buy Western clothes or whatever with curves built into them, and there are gaps in the clothes, they don't fill them out. They get kind of saggy bits, so they wear padded bums or whatever to fill them out. But here's the thing. If you're in Japan and you already have a padded bum, the jeans are made for people generally who don't have padded bums. So they're not made for kind of typical Western Caucasian body types, and this is what caused Texan in Tokyo, who went to 3 Levi's shops and couldn't find jeans that all fit around the waist and so on, but the bum thing wasn't working. And you can see it's magnificent. It's totally fine. There is nothing wrong with that. Baby got back, and it's all good. But again, I can attest to this. She ended up crying, having some sort of a breakdown. A body issue breakdown, and she emphasizes she never had this. But Travis Moore says he doesn't get it. The issue is that she is thin, but even being thin, and she is thin, and even being thin, her body still probably isn't the shape that that tight-fitting clothes were designed to fit around in Japan. Japanese have a complex going the opposite way. So my problem is I'm 6'1.5". I'm almost 6'1". I'm 184 centimeters. And there's always a couple of every workplace I've ever been in Japan, there's always been a couple of Japanese taller than me. I'm never the tallest. And when I play rugby against university teams, against people younger than me, the kids are bigger than me. The older generation are definitely shorter, but there still is. It's really hard to buy clothes that are my size, particularly my arm length. I've got long arms and legs and so on, so I'm trying to buy trousers, and there are times where you go to Harajuku, you see some cool clothes and stuff like that, and I want to try one on or see if they've got my size, and they never have it, and I just give up. I just buy all my stuff overseas. But I wonder what the Japanese who are my size do instead of that. So I just retweeting that picture by Saguraif. But yeah, so I've had the same situation, and I've gotten extremely frustrated where I've wanted to buy like a work jacket or something nice, and the thing is that there's really nice clothes. Often glasses in Japan. I've got a small face by Japanese standards, but Japanese glasses often pop off the sides of my head. If I try to buy a hat here, the hats here are kind of enormous. And Japanese, they'll say they've got the Japanese will talk about the ideal head being 1/8 the size of the body. Every Japanese person knows about this, and it's about this ideal of having a skull that's a certain size, because Japanese think that they have big heads, or big heads that are too big. And you can kind of tell the glasses are bigger, the hats are bigger, and so on. So there is that sort of a thing. With the childbirth thing as well, everyone was kind of amazed in in Japan to see that, the day within 24 hours of the birth, walking around outside with the baby outside. One, having the baby outside is kind of unbelievable to Japanese, and two, walking around. Japanese hips are not child-rearing hips like Western, like Caucasian hips are. So yeah, it's different body shapes, and it's a pain. It's a pain for me too. I've never quite gotten into the same situation that Texan in Tokyo was, but there again, yeah, it's kind of different, I guess. But definitely some sympathy there, and that comes back to this other thing here about sizes. Apparently somebody bought a rugby jersey. I think this was on Reddit. Yeah, this is from LabaQ, which is a Japanese site which aggregates basically Western Reddit threads. And this person bought a rugby jersey, and it's got a picture of the sizes. Boom. So you can see there, Australia medium, UK medium, EU medium, America medium, Japan XL. And that's kind of it, right? And I'm basically a large, so I'll buy something. In Japan, when I'm looking at XLs, I'm checking, am I going to be able to wear this? And often, the XLs in Japan are not big enough for me, and I am an M back in Australia. I'll buy Ls probably to be comfortable. But so this is another thing. I think Victor made a video about this week as well. Whoa. So what else we got here? Oh man, so so I love this. By the way, this is another one by Sagurai, so thank you for that. That became the thumbnail from last week. That was awesome, and yes, I shot first. He had it coming. The thing I was talking about earlier, so I'll explain a little bit about the exchange with Hiroko Tabuchi about this. So there's a feature here on this guy called Uemura, who used to be an author for the Asahi Shimbun, and there were a number of stories done in the 1990s where kind of the whole comfort woman thing came out in the open and became a big kerfuffle. There are a number of stories, Asahi being a left-leaning, kind of sympathetic to Korea and China-friendly, kind of hostile towards the LDP and the right-wing government, and hostile towards Japan's war history, and saying that we were those right-wingers were terrible during the war. They went as more information came out about the comfort women. They were kind of known, but they were never really talked about much in open. But apparently there was this guy, Uemura. I made a mistake. First of all, I thought this was a guy who wrote the article that was retracted by the Asahi. So I should explain this first. Late last year, the Asahi retracted an article which featured an interview with a guy called Yoshida, who claimed to be part of a special unit that operated on Jeju Island in between Japan and Korea, that's part of Korea, whose purpose was going around and kidnapping Korean women to gang press them into service as sex slaves for the Japanese military and comfort women stations. And he described how they'd go around the countryside and look for women to kidnap, and that was part of his military, that these were under military orders. It turns out that story, as I understand it, was a fraud. Hiroko Tabuchi insists that the story isn't a fraud, it was just that he changed the names and places. But apparently a couple of years after the story came out, because it caused such a kind of a shock in Korea and in Japan, which ultimately it did cause a lot of this particular story, that there were units going around to kidnap Korean women, contributed to the atmosphere that led to the Kono statement apologizing for the comfort woman, and the whole kind of big drama around this whole thing, and frankly what was seen as being a great terrible thing that everyone's grandfathers was a part of, being in the Japanese military during World War II. So it turned out that someone went to Jeju Island and went and asked all the locals, do you remember this unit that went around kidnapping women? And they couldn't find anyone that could corroborate the story, nor any of the people. The information was not corroborable. As I understand, the Yoshida story was totally discredited. It was basically just a guy making up a story to get some attention. And he was he was a con artist or whatever. He's dead now, so he can't defend himself. But for whatever reason, the article was first published in 1991. It was totally discredited by 1992 or 93. However, the Asahi reprinted the article 16 times through the 1990s, including after Sankei went and found out it was all fake. And apparently, as I recall reading some stuff around this, there was even like when the story was first, what was it? it wasn't retracted, but when they issued some sort of a story around a correction around the story last year, the heads of Asahi said we can't retract the story, because if we retract the story, we'll be giving a field day to the people who will use this to deny the whole comfort women thing and, you know, to attack the Asahi. So we can't deny it. But so in a way, it was almost like, you know, they were afraid of what was going to happen, so they used that as a justification for not retracting the story that should have been retracted back. In fact, it was 1994 when it should have been retracted. He left it 20 years too late. 2014, they finally retracted it. When they retracted it, all the right-wing newspapers, including the Sankei, that found out that that story was a fake, everyone else kind of really laid into Asahi, including the new Abe government as well. The Abe government sent someone to the United Nations to actually go and say, you know, that statement that you guys did on the comfort woman, it's all a big misunderstanding now. We want that to be amended to reflect the fact that the story that triggered this whole thing was fake. Which is to say, what the Abe government and what the right wing generally around this has tried to exploit this in two ways. One, they've exploited it to try to, you know, destroy and undermine the Asahi, the left-wing newspaper that published these stories, and indeed published them after the story was discredited, which was kind of bad form, and the way that they handled, you know, the whole retraction and the post-retraction as well was terrible. But they want to destroy the Asahi, but two, they also want to use this as a way to disclaim or to disown the entire comfort woman issue, which of course is not what this is. This doesn't deny that comfort women existed, or, you know, what they were doing. It just discredits one aspect of the narrative that came up around this, which was that it was actually part of it's a nuance to the story, but the nuance is, and it's a nuance which is still probably, I believe it's widely believed in Korea and outside of Japan, which is that the Japanese military directly was involved as part of military orders in the kidnapping and the abduction and the sex slavery of the women who became comfort women. And it kind of was. The Japanese military ran the comfort women stations, and those women say that they were in those stations, they felt like they were being raped, they felt like they couldn't leave. So in that respect, at least at the business end of the whole operation, the Japanese military, I mean, if you talk about this as a human trafficking ring, it was being done to supply the Japanese military, which was responsible for it. So yes, there was that, but they've always said, but we weren't responsible for going around kidnapping women, except in Indonesia and a couple of other places in the Philippines and so on, where there were cases of Dutch women and so on who were actually abducted by Japanese soldiers and forced used as sex slaves. But in those cases, the soldiers who did that wasn't as part of Japanese military orders. Those people were punished and executed by Japanese military police for what they did, and that wasn't part of the general comfort woman system, even though a lot of people believe that the 200,000 or so Korean comfort women were abducted the same way as the Dutch women in Indonesia. What the opponents are trying to say, based on the Asahi retraction, is that it's all a big misunderstanding. You know, there weren't abductions. It wasn't all like Indonesia. This was all just a system of prostitution where these people were often, you know, basically the same way that women are trafficked as prostitutes, you know, and used as sex slaves today, through being sold, through debt or whatever, or tricked or deceived or whatever, that they end up in these situations. So the story that Hiroko Tobuchi was writing here, or she was involved with, I think in the New York Times covering, was this guy Uemura. I thought he wrote that retracted story, but that's apparently not the case. He actually wrote one of the first comfort woman stories, which is that for a long time, even though the comfort woman thing was known, the thing is that the shame associated with it was such that very few actual comfort women in Korea ever came forward to talk about it, even when it became kind of a subject in the late 1980s and so on. There's a woman, I think her name is Hak Jun-sung. I think that's her name anyway. A Korean lady was the first lady who came forward, was interviewed by this guy. And this is one of the first comfort women interviews for a Japanese newspaper, was done by this guy. Apparently, as I understand, so the right wingers he was working as a professor at a university where the university was threatened with bombing if they didn't fire him, and the university backed down and fired him, or they removed him for a time. Death threats against his family, death threats against him. It turns out, so why are they doing that? The people who are doing that, the nuts who are doing this because they claim that he faked that story with the comfort woman. I actually went online when I was talking with Hiroko Tobuchi about this, who I completely agree with in the sense that, you know, sex slavery is sex slavery. If the women are there and they're having sex and it's not consensual, it's sex slavery, right? If they're there as debt slaves, if they're there, if money's going to pimps or whatever, it's still human trafficking. It's still sex slavery. It doesn't change the quality of what the system was. What this guy's getting death threats over, I thought this was in the broader context of the Asahi just having screwed up so badly on the retraction thing, and this is what I was having the debate with her about. But apparently what happened was with this guy, in his notes of the interview, for whatever reason, he misheard, he insists it was a mistake, nothing more than a mistake. Apparently he heard that she was taken away by the Japanese military to go and become a comfort woman. I think that was the story, whereas she actually mentions in the tape of the interview that he gave with her, which was that her parents sold her into prostitution to pay off debts. And he left that detail out. And apparently this is something that's very common, you know, that was common at the time. Korean families were selling their own daughters into being comfort women, you know, to pay off whatever debts. And the money for that was coming back to the debt collectors and to the loan sharks and so on was from the Japanese military. They were funding, you know, so they insist, yeah, we were paying, they were prostitutes. But in a system that was based on human trafficking and slavery, and that's again something that Abe, you know, acknowledged. The thing is that the whole nuance has become, and I think the narrative has become, that this wasn't like a modern day white slavery situation, that this was actually, the Japanese military was actually, there is a problem with this narrative in Korea, which is that the Koreans don't want to admit their own involvement in this too much, you know, like as anything other than victims. However, you know, Korean families were selling their own children into the system. And that was part of it. That's something that the Japanese right wing wants to focus on. The Korean wants to say that the Korean press and government wants to say that it was all the Japanese military's fault. Truth is, it's kind of a combination of both. The fact is that missing that detail, whether it was innocent or not, it doesn't make the whole story a forgery, which is what they're claiming. His story was a forgery, and why they're threatening his kids, and he doesn't deserve the death threats and so on that he's getting. But it's an interesting point. And by the way, the New York Times, I made a comment. I thought that the New York Times is being too sympathetic to him and to the Asahi, because I thought the Asahi screwed up and they deserved to get an ass kicking. But yeah, that's what the story is with that. And it's a really interesting thing. I had a very good discussion with her, and you know, some people kind of came on, but I had some interesting discussions around that, and that became a thing. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. I'm going to go into music mode because we're way over time, but there's been I thought I didn't have many topics tonight, but it turns out that I do. So I'm going to switch over into music mode. So how do I do that? Let me do that. I prepared a pretty cool beat for tonight. So I've got to... Now how do I do this? I put that there and I put that there. No. I'm going to put that there. Okay, put that there and that there. And turn that on. And that on. And switch screens. Okay, that's working. Take that off. Turn down the lights. Let me turn off the light up above. Okay, so let me just move this nearby so I get an outro going. So sorry that went too long again tonight, but I guess there's just lots of cool stuff to talk about. Oh, wait a minute. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so you can still hear me. Let me just check that we've got music. Looks like you can hear that. Okay, so this is the outro that I made up and listened to too much the Antwoord this week. And as a result of that, I've created this track. Oof. Okay, so this is pretty cool, this one. So I've just queued this up. I haven't actually recorded anything yet. Okay, so this is my outro track. I'm going to start that again because that didn't react like it was supposed to. Okay, try that again. Ah. See you, Benjamin Harris. Not even working tonight. Yeah. So okay, that's kind of a lot of storage for recording. I'm gonna record this later. I'm gonna record this later, but I'm just gonna play this as an outro. I'll leave it there. But I'll mix this up and upload it later, and I'll make the loop available. So thank you for joining. Hope you enjoyed the show, and see you again next week, same time, same place, right here. And 2.5 Oyajis, which of course is on every Wednesday night, although that is subject to a reschedule. And I will let you know when we are on again soon. Victor's trying to resort his schedule, but I'll see you all you guys again later, and I will make this track available soon. I hope you enjoyed that track. It's kind of cool, isn't it? It's actually from Foku Juri Nai Julie Nayas, which anyway, I call it Love Julie Nayas. And I'm going to upload that later so you can catch that. I really like that. So anyway, catch you guys later, and peace. Oh, and now I turn it off right there. Let me just